Good morning, my name's Paul, and I'm a recovering architect. Good morning, Paul. It's a 12-step program, isn't it, sometimes? It's very good to be back home. Actually, my dad's from Donegal, my mom's from Meath. I just happen to be born in New York City, the home of a guy that's going to build a big wall between Mexico and the United States. It's going to be huge. And my goodness, he won the New Hampshire primaries earlier this morning. So I'm glad I have my Irish citizenship, because you may have to make some room for me. So it's going to be a very interesting time over in the U.S. I was asked to come here to talk a little bit about BIM and its effects on the built environment. I think that there's a big misnomer about BIM. I was part of the original team that helped create this thing called Charles River Software that we renamed it Revit, and was purchased by Autodesk. It was actually a really good hit. We had about $2 million US worth of sales. And they bought us for $133 million. So Carl Bass and I are very good friends. Actually, every time I come near him, he holds onto his wallet. But when we originally created it, it was not meant for the use that it's doing today. The problem is that you have a hammer, and every problem you think you have to hit into the wall, because right now most of the problems are screws. That means that when you're actually using BIM, there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. The problem is, are you really using the right tool for the right thing? And that becomes a big issue, right? Because you're talking about a tool that was originally created for people that know means and methods of how a building goes together. And that's the big difference between a drawing package like CAD and the actual work of virtual design and construction. Meaning that most architects do not know means and methods, nor do they have to. That's not your job. Your job is actually for design intent to protect the safety, health, and welfare of the general public. That's what we're supposed to do. And hopefully make aesthetically nice environments. But now that becomes at loggerheads between a lot of people creating a lot of BIM on the design side, that when you actually get a constructor or even a sub-trade in there, they start to take a look at it and they go, I got to make my own model. Right? So we have this thing called BIM wash, and it's washed over all of us. Now, that doesn't mean that the expertise of what certain people in this audience, especially if you're at this conference, you're probably very good at BIM, and that's great. The issue is, as an industry, how do you gain momentum so that all stakeholders have their place? Maybe not with having to learn Revit. That's not the goal here. Sorry about that. That's not the goal here. The goal is, how do you start to introduce different types of processes and workflows so that certain people can actually make more money, get a project done on time, hopefully on budget, and start to really make change, which means that we're starting to look at it at a generational change. No longer are we looking at how to produce documents to create the built environment, but in the same way that, we went from letter writing and memos to email, faxes, and now we're into tweets and text messages. We're moving from documented processes into the overall digital workflow. The AC industry worldwide is entering into the matrix. And there's a whole bunch of people coming into our profession that are very comfortable there. Those are the kids that are coming up and they're working differently. So when we start to say, who are we building these tools for, and who are we building this environment for? Yes, we have the here and now and the practicality of we've got to get a building up out of the ground. That doesn't mean that you have to use BIM. We've been building a long time without it. So the idea is, how do you make it a must-have rather than a nice-to-have? And really what we're looking at right now is how to then place it into the context of value propositions. So there's a lot of money out there in the world today talking about this thing called the Internet of Things. And there's a lot of big companies, much larger than most of the companies in the AC industry, that are pushing that agenda, yet they're struggling. They're really trying to find a place for these things called sensors and all these other things. But when you put it into the context of a building, of a neighborhood, and a city, now all of a sudden you give it contextuality. Now all of a sudden people can go, oh, that's what I can do with it. One of the reasons why apps really started to come into the foray instead of applications, right, things on iPhones and whatnot, is because of that realization. That made my life easier. That made it easier for me to get a taxi, because I could use this thing called Uber. I don't have to book into a hotel. Sorry, it's a hotel, great place, but Airbnb, wow, what a whole thing. What is going to be the Uber and Airbnb for our industry? What's going to absolutely differentiate that so that it becomes easier for the stakeholders to all either make money, and in certain cases, the biggest people that are going to be naysayers about anything I say today are the people that are going to lose the money because you're feeding off the inefficiencies of this industry. Screw you. That's the message. The inefficiencies are being challenged. And we're really looking at this in the context of a complete city. So what our organization does is that we're actually three companies. We do design, traditional design, but in very unique ways. Instead of just using building product manufacturing catalogs, we also have complete ecosystems of technology that are just as important as how you specify that window. So I'm going to show you some examples about what that means. We also have a BIM company that is actually led by process first, and then pushed down into production, which is a big, big, big deal. I don't know how many of you in your firms have ever done a process mapping exercise, roles, responsibilities, materials, equipment, and then start to see your workflows so that you can start to see, well, this is where we're at, this is where we want to be, and do a simple gap analysis so that then you know where to put your resources. Maybe you want to buy technology, maybe you need to be educated on certain processes. This is the thing that we don't do. Our discipline in our industry is good, but I think we can be a little better. The third part is our innovation group, and this is where things get very interesting. Because we know that we need certain components to actually make up what's called a smart city. By the way, smart city will probably go away next year is the next thing. There'll be another word for it. Really what it is about urban innovation. Because the majority of the world's population by the year 2050 will be in cities, approaching 80%. Which means that we as the built environment stewards, we need to start to accommodate that, which is why BIM becomes not just a drafting tool. You're supposed to do that. Do you really care what calculator that your accountant uses for your taxes? The rest of the world doesn't care how we build the buildings. They don't care if it's CAD, if it's on bumwad paper, or it's BIM. It's up to us to understand that BIM is not just about the design and construction process, it's about the afterlife. It's a transactional data vehicle. When we start to look at it that way, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter about families or right mouse clicks that do things. You're supposed to know that. Keep on going to the different conferences for those things and understand that people like Bentley and Archicad and others are here to help us. That's cool. But what we're really looking at is the data that you create is the digital DNA of the built environment. The digital DNA of the built environment, which means that the afterlife of that is much more important than just the design and construction phase. That's why when we've been pulled into these conferences and different types of ways of working, we've been pretty lucky. What we're going to show you today are about 12 different cities of various sizes, from 200,000 people to about 12 million people, that we're designing from scratch. So yeah, I usually don't get sleep, and it's not because of jet lag, it's because I used to have hair. Try designing a city and all its components, because we're designing building codes, zoning, educational facilities, which then also becomes what is education? Healthcare facilities, what is healthcare? Especially when we have the capabilities now in these brand new cities of having clinics, not hospitals, because the doctor should be able to come to you. Why should you have to schlep and disease everyone else to go into a petri dish like a hospital, right? So how do you do that? Well, we're looking at autonomous vehicles that will actually drive to your place, almost like the old time of having the doctor with the black bag come for a home visit. Imagine entire theaters of surgery coming to you. How about entire restaurants with the chef? What about school? So we're rethinking what all these things should be, and starting to then take into account that it's not just us. We're not building it. We're not building the cities of yesterday, because most of us use BIM for building the buildings of yesterday, because that's what we're comfortable with, right? You don't care about the inefficiencies. Why? Because you get a paycheck during that schematic design, development, construction document phase. And that pays the bills. Well, guess what? Those are going away really, really quick. And you don't want to be commoditized in a way that you're competing against some guy from China that knows how to 3D print a building and actually ship it here to Dublin. That's yeah, well, that won't happen in my lifetime. Yeah. I don't think you think that Uber would have happened so quick either, right? That's the world we're living in right now. So we've been very fortunate with meeting and having now not just conversations, but actually partnerships with the Chinese leadership, Premier Li and President Xi. President Obama is a big supporter of ours. I was actually at the White House meeting with President Xi and President Obama, talking about what this does with smart cities and how that affects policy, and then how does that affect not just the built environment, but the environment overall. Because the United States government and the Chinese government made an agreement in November of 2015 that they will lower their emission levels by 20% by the year 2030. That's a huge, big deal when you talk about the two largest economies in the world, polluting everything, right? How are they going to do it? And we're starting to see that since cities account for 40% of all the energy usage, this is the way to do it. Is to actually go in there and start with the built environment and the things like Internet of Things that interact with it. The idea of clean tech. And I'm not talking about solar, water, and hydro. That's so 2015. We're talking about piezoelectric systems, where every single horizontal surface, as you're walking on it, it's creating 14 watts of power per square meter. That then can actually be wirelessly charged right to your cell phone, right here. We have that technology now. And that technology comes from Qualcomm. It's called Halo. And Interface Carpet is our partner for the PPAs and electric. So let me show you what this stuff looks like. Right now, BIM 2.0, we're right now in that sea change of trying to understand what's the content that we want to put inside of this thing. Of course, we're supposed to put in all of our specifications, be it performance or prescriptive. Of course, we're supposed to know the best of quality-wise for those pieces of building product information. And then, of course, the aesthetic quality. What does this thing want to be? Unfortunately, we've been taught ever since school, especially as architects, is think about your building. I don't find that there's a huge push into the contextualization outside of maybe the adjacent properties, right? What does that mean when you actually stick it in there, and what does that do to the Lua? When you're sticking another building in here, and how does that affect the entire process? What does that mean when you can start to pull in both the interior of the building that works to the exterior building, and maybe it's a kilometer down the road, and how does that all interact? Those are the things that BIM should show us. Unfortunately, right now we have tools that create 500 megabyte, 1 gig, 2 gig Revit models, and right now some of our machinery can only handle that one. What about a multi-BIM environment? Being able to put many different pieces of BIM in there. I know at the gathering you had my friend Kimona Muna here that's actually starting that process of a multi-BIM environment. There's others out there that do phenomenal work with that. So that when we start to take a look at what does this building want to be, you're doing it in the context of what does the region, what does society, and then more importantly, what does the market really want? Because now when you have data, we can start to do very interesting things, let's say on a pragmatic level. My friend David Hernandez and I started this really cool get-together, a community building exercise called the AEC Hackathon. And we did it out in Facebook for the first two hackathons, and now we brought it global. Actually, we had one in London in this past July, and it's really taken us by surprise, the pent-up need for having innovation in our industry. Globally, the AEC industry sits just below the fishing industry in expenditures for R&D. The fishing industry, right? So that, and it's really not our fault either, right? Because we have limited amount of time, very little profit, and we're supposed to innovate all the time, right? So that's why it's very difficult to find people that have a budget line item that can say, we want to do R&D. But when you actually take it out of the context of how your business runs and you form an event, that's when hackathons become really, really interesting. Because what we do is we invite people in on a Friday night. They all don't know each other. And we have a mix of AEC professionals, hardware guys, software developers, just all these. What we do is we throw them into a room. And we have this thing called a lightning round. Everyone comes together and they sort of form up these teams because we challenge them to say, on Sunday afternoon, you have to show us a working model of a prototype of something that's going to help the AEC industry. And then at the end of the Sunday, we give it away for free. If it's software, it goes up on GitHub for free. If it's a piece of hardware or something, we tape it and it goes up on our YouTube channels. So it's a really, really cool community that's built upon trust, innovation, and actually trying to do something that helps the community. Nice community building tool. But during this AEC hackathon, we found some really, really cool things that were practical. And a lot of it had to use BIM as a communications tool. No longer was it about these right mouse clicks and families and doing all this fun stuff and doing clash detection. So what? That's cool, you're supposed to do that. But what's really cool is when you can actually take a drone, stick an iPhone on there, start up GoToMeeting, right? Now all of a sudden you have a video conference call and we're sending it up to a structure, a steel structure that's still exposed, the screen's not on, and there's an issue, right? It could be a clarification issue of a bolt or something like that. But instead of the guy that has the problem going down the escalator, or the elevator, going into the job trailer, calling up someone, or using their cell phone up there, not really getting all the information to the decision makers, how about taking a drone? It goes up just like Spacely Sprockets out of the Jetsons, right? Where Mr. Spacely used to come over when George Jetson was snoozing, and all of a sudden this thing would fly over to him going, George, and he used to wake up, same damn thing. This thing would go over, all of a sudden all the stakeholders are in that Brady Bunch type of way of having all the windows open, and everyone's making a decision in real time. The time savings and the efficiency of getting the right decision right there and then in the field, in the workflow of the moment, was what this little hack did. They actually made a company out of it, and they were sold for $4.6 million 3 months ago. They got acquired. So these things are real. Like there's a lot of people that want to do stuff, except that they don't have the environment to do that. But when you start to take a look at BIM now, not just as a drone type thing, but what about starting to embed things inside of BIM? There's a lot of movement right now in this world of gaming. right? And the gaming environments are really, really spectacular because number one, when you stick something inside of a gaming environment, like let's say a BIM, you give it coordinates, a latitude and a longitude, it perfectly then situates it inside of the gaming environment because it's a perfect geospatial environment. Wow, and gaming could do that. Well, it does. The second thing it does is that you can add in components on standards basis, like stream video. So imagine being inside of your BIM, but you're actually having your conference call inside of one of the rooms because that's just the way it is. These ideas of mixed reality, both virtual reality, augmented reality, and looking at it on your screen are merging really, really quick. And I think what the explosion is going to happen is in this fall of 2016 when Microsoft finally releases HoloLens to the public. Because I thought HoloLens was going to be meant for the Xbox. It's not. It's really meant for business-to-business transactions. So imagine being able to put on a lens, you're inside the environments, now what do you do? So Trimble has been working with them very, very closely. We've been working with them. Actually, their global lab is over in London in Oxford Circle. It's called Microsoft Studios. It's remarkable what they're doing because it's not quite augmented reality, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. It's not quite virtual reality, but it takes BIM and puts it into a mixed reality so that different people that want to see different results visually for making a decision can do it. I think that's the big thing here. When you start to take a look at communication, coordination, and collaboration, that's BIM. Unfortunately, right now, we use it kind of sort of for a little bit of coordination, like, things like Navisworks and things like that. Collaboration, that gets a little scary, but in a virtual reality world, how cool is that? I challenge you. Any kid under age 15 probably has Minecraft, right? Watch how they use it. It's an online version where they can do it themselves or they invite in friends and they build a built environment together. They're better at collaborating than we are. And they're actually making really cool environments. Start thinking about how they're starting to use that and think about those processes. So communication is a big piece. Plus, this idea of virtual design and construction, which is really at the heart of all this. If we don't start using the visualization techniques of 3D and really build it as if you're building it, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. And I don't care how many things that you just want to slap together. You're doing it wrong because it will catch up to you. Because there are people out there that are pushing BIM in a way that is going to go one of two paths. Either we're starting to get to a point where the people that really know how to do it are starting to get a lot of recognition, there's only a few of them, and the rest of us are still using it like CAD, and we're just going to go up by the wayside. And that's the inflection point that we're at today, right? So February 2016, mark it down. This is the start of a new way of working. And I believe that Ireland should be one of the major spots to make that happen. And I'll show you why in a second. So this idea of stewardship of the data, extending the service and relationship really leads to, again, this idea of a multi-BIM environment where you're taking into context your project, but you have other inputs that are starting to help those decisions. So this is where we came around with this idea of, well, what's the analogy we can make? Well, in the case of BIM, we have this entire world now of looking at a city-like body as an organism. No longer, the idea of smart cities is not to create a big urban jungle, but to actually have this entire ecosystem work on a biomimicry way of growing. Because if you can imagine, the two things that keep me up at night are who are we building the cities for? Because I was on a task force for President Xi that said, take a look at our 16 cities that we've built over the past 4 years that can accommodate 1 million people or above that are empty. They're called the ghost cities of China. They exist right now. Tell us what we did wrong and how can we turn around and improve it. So we're right in the middle of that process. But as we're building these other cities in places like Australia, the Middle East, parts of China, I'm sort of really torn where the people on our design team are cultural anthropologists, sociologists, psychiatrists, and people that really understand the culture of that one area. Not people that know how to draft and design. We've got to understand what the soul of this stuff is, because for the first time in history, we're not saying, like in Dublin, where this grew organically over time. Trading port, you had the river, you had the sea, you had a centralized part here that made sense to settle here, and it grew organically over time. It's like we're putting, the idea of magic grow onto our plant, and it's growing like exponentially quick. And we have to do that in a way that's practical, because we're still a private company. We're still about profit. But at the same time, how do you not build the 17th ghost city of China? So a lot of that has to do with this idea of ecosystems, where we have cardiovascular systems, skeletal system, waste systems. And we tie that back into this approach that you don't look at them independently, they have to work as a body. So when you start to take a look at fiber and the loop and all these other things, they all start to make sense, not as standalone entities, but as an integrated approach to solving problems. So we look at things like wireless internet as part of that primitive way of looking at a nervous system. But like all nervous systems and bodies, it has to have a brain. That's BIM. Now suddenly shit just got real, right? That's BIM. Because there's nothing else out there. It's a control mechanism. Because it's visual, so you don't have to think too much about it. You can understand things and put flags in there like, something's sick. We already have a lot of this stuff in place, like building management systems, building automation systems, whatnot. We're just not using them properly because we think of them just for that building. We start to have enough data in each building. Think of those buildings as servers. Think of all the buildings around here that just went up, 3 Arena, Gibson Hotel here, the whole Point complex. Imagine each one of those being a server full of digital DNA that can talk to each other. Because you're doing the internet or the internetworking of buildings. So when you hear the Internet of Things, you hear all this mumbo jumbo, well, you have to say it's not about the Internet of Things, it's not about the Internet of everything, as Cisco says. It's not, it's in context, it's the Internet of buildings. And once people start to understand that when buildings start to talk with each other, they can actually do some remarkable things. Safety, security, better user experience. That's the world that we're seeing. That's the type of thing that we should be thinking of, because once Ireland discovers that and starts to implement that in real time, no one else is going to be able to touch you. You're finding this is the time for leadership. This is why we're here. We're starting to think about what the guiding principles are. We already have the projects underway. I mean, our Australian project right now is 114 billion US dollars. Largest construction project in the history of the world. A high-speed rail connecting Melbourne and Sydney with 8 cities hanging off of it that don't exist right now. Pretty interesting, right? All privately funded, by the way. That's enormous. We need help. And we are looking at this not as a US project or an Australian project, whatever. This is a global industry project, and we do need help. Some of the stuff that I've seen, especially at the way that the industry here in Ireland is at, we now have the opportunity to leapfrog that. Which means that when we start to take a look at what this is, where do we start? Think about it like a recipe book or a cookbook, right? That has to be written. First thing you start with, of course, is ingredients. You need lots of ingredients. We call that innovation. What better place than down here? The Docklands. What companies do you have down here? Every freaking innovation tech company in the world, right? They're here. Use that. Use that. How the architectural and design community should be reaching out and be best friends with Facebook and the Googles and the Intels and the IBMs and all this stuff. That has to happen now. That has to happen. The private partnerships made with other industry innovators are going to be your ingredients. It's going to be your spices. It's going to be your meats and your potatoes and all that stuff. Now comes the fun part. How do you put it all together? And these are the recipes. And remember, BIM is the controller mechanism because you're in control of that. You create it, that's the digital DNA. What content do you want to put in there? Well, we have lots of different ideas, from the environment to energy, mobility, solar, our piezo systems, security, healthcare. Where do you want to start? It depends on what the market wants. And that's a discovery process. Which means, in the case of working with the Dubai Expo right now, so we're the incoming master developers and architects for Sheikh Mohammed and the government of Dubai to put on the 2020 Expo. They said, we want something spectacular, like when in Chicago they showed off the light bulb, or the Eiffel Tower in Paris. What we're doing is we're creating autonomous vehicles that are intelligent. Think Uber, meaning Tesla, meaning that we have a way, especially in our smart cities in Australia, that says that when you purchase a home, you get this for free. You get your pod. The pods come together naturally, when they want to and when they need to, that roam throughout the entire city. You have roadways that are more narrow, you have no traffic lights and no need for parking lots. The average city in the world, 32% of their land mass is for parking lots. How stupid is that? Now when you get 32% back, what are you going to do with it? I'm thinking parks, I'm thinking back to nature, I'm thinking that type of thing. Wow, what can you do with it? In this case, we have different types of autonomous vehicles that go around. Some are for moving around, others are for services, And what this does is it creates that circulatory system that doesn't exist today. When you design the cities properly, especially as a backbone spine, this becomes your way of having the heart pump everything through an urban environment. We call it the centipede, and it all runs on today's technology. Our first prototype is out actually being tested right now in Shenzhen, China, and we're looking to actually, hopefully, implement this in Dublin by the end of this year. Test it. Want an urban environment to do it in. It also means that when you have this type of environment, we have to have good control systems. So we've licensed from Otis Elevator their destination control systems. You know, Otis has a patent on this technology for vertical integration and vertical control, where if you've ever walked into a lobby and you need to get up to the third level, you put in level 3, let's say go to elevator number 2. And when you go in there, there's no buttons, right? That's for safety and security and for a more efficient way of making the elevators work. We're doing that horizontally. So that when you're at the expo, which is where this was originally developed for, there's 3 exits. And instead of waiting online for a tram to come by, you just break out your mobile phone, put it into the app, I'm in row number 4 near light pole number L. They'll say, get into centipede number 2. And you get in there, and it'll take off as a tram, but then it'll break away and bring you right there. More efficient, more effective, safer, more secure. So is that the only thing that's out there? No. But think about that technology when you start to take a look at what Tesla's doing, what Mercedes-Benz is doing with the autonomous vehicles. Now you're giving choice to people. Not so much that they're going to be able to drive, but they're able to get the status, right? Because we're still human beings. You can't just make everything like what Bernie Sanders wants, where you distribute everything evenly. There's choice. So the idea is, how do you take that choice and then put it into play? You actually have a standard, like a centipede system, at the control level, using BIM to actually be the major control system as a multi-BIM environment. I'll show you what that looks like right at the end. It's pretty spectacular at the end of the day. So this is how it works also as an ecosystem. All these are EV, or electronic vehicles, which means that we have to power them. So the United States government spent tons of money on these charging station ideas, like the next generation of petrol stations, right? They spent like hundreds of millions of dollars. So 2 weeks ago today, I was at the Department of Transportation headquarters. Secretary Fox invited me to speak there because of the stuff is being done for real, and he's like, we got to get caught up to speed. So I showed this off and actually had people from Qualcomm in there. And what it did was we showed them how wirelessly we could charge things, electric vehicles, lights, street lights, iPhones, without any issues of having your hair stand up or anything like that. It just works, and it's a great technology. We implement that into the actual floor beds of the roadway and the sidewalks, because it uses compression technology. Piezo is Latin for compress. What it does is it excites the molecules and creates electricity. In the case of vehicular traffic, we're getting right now in Atlanta with our installation on one of the highways, 600 cars an hour moving through that we get 8.4 kilowatts per hour. Wow. So we're starting to see that by moving, you're creating energy. Wow, what a concept. I know I'd probably lose a couple of pounds knowing if I could make sure that my lights are going to be on so I could watch my sports match on TV. I'd probably move around a little bit more. So these are the types of things that we're starting to think, wow. When Secretary Fox saw this, his jaw just dropped. This was created at a place called Georgia Tech underneath Professor Wong. Professor Wong was this year's runner-up for the Nobel Prize in Physics. So yeah, this stuff is there. We've installed this, that you'll see, next slide here. Let's see. Okay, so the lower right-hand corner, that's Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. A little over 100 million people a year walk through those different A through F tiers, and we have this fully installed. Right now, they keep all their internal lights on just using piezoelectric, cutting down about 30% of their overall energy usage. Just one simple way of putting it into play. The other ones, actually, I guess we just saw him dance, didn't we? Yeah, that was actually a kiosk, and it's pretty cool. We call it the piezo selfie. So what happens is, you dance, you do what you got to do, and what it does is it creates a lot of energy. And then what happens is we have the LED lights come up, going, okay, boom, you got it. And we put up a little over 500,000 posts on Facebook at Atlanta Hartsfield Airport because of that. Because what it does is it takes a selfie of you, totally powered by yourself. So again, it's this next generation of clean tech 2.0 that we're really, really excited about. These are the types of things that are coming to market really quick because we have a worldwide exclusive to commercialize these research for Georgia Tech. And we feel that this is like the next big phase because we can specify it into what? Our projects. So it's sort of nice being on the owner's side because we get to specify a lot of this stuff. more importantly, there's a lot of things that we're still looking at, such as, because the molecules get excited by vibration, I have 2 PhD students now, they're in their second month of a 2-year project, to take a look at different materials that can be put onto the facades of all of our buildings. So you can imagine yesterday with that wind that was howling up and down the Liffey over here, if you had a type of material that could vibrate because of the wind, what sort of power could you generate out of that? I actually want them to go one step further. I did my thesis on frozen music. I took Baroque style music and matched that through mathematical ratios to buildings of that time. I also took Stravinsky's Rite of Spring to Le Corbusier and Talking Heads to Richard Meyer. And we actually proved out through mathematical ratios of moving through space, moving through music, that it would work. Now I can actually do something about that, right? Because imagine the different materials done on a vertical skin, and then what happens to that? Could you actually make music, right? Like wind chimes type of thing, but have it changed so it's not the same thing all the time. That type of forward-thinking stuff can only happen inside of environments that you can do simulations. We're using Revit. So again, using BIM for a totally alternative purpose than just for creating a bunch of construction documents. Right? The other one I want to show you here is another thing that we are doing. I'm not sure if the music's all the different plazas, there's 5 different plazas at the World Expo, are going to have piezo in here. What we want to prove out to people is, at 2:15, something pops up on my phone. Why don't you come over to plaza number 2? It's 2:15. And we're going to do a flash mob dance. Here's Michael Jackson or whatever. And we're going to have all these people dancing, and we have LED displays surrounding the plaza. We're going to start seeing the power go up, and at the end of the song, say, congratulations, you just created enough power to power this store for the next 3 days. Again, trying to show off what the effects are, not just saying that we put piezo in there and magically something happens. So again, that cause and effect affects behavior change. The other thing that I probably want to bring forward is that there's a lot of urban reinstallation of streetlights from HID to LED. Great way of going. It's 40% savings and all that stuff. But the cool part about it is that my friend Hugh Martin has a company called Sensity. And what they do is that they actually put a diode in between the bulb and the socket. When you do that, you create a 10 gig Wi-Fi network ubiquitously around your city. 10 gig. That's like going from a star to the freaking Grand Canyon. And I don't think that's for posting up more pictures of grandma on Facebook. We should do something with that, right? So all this stuff is coming fast and furious as part of these ecosystems. We're actually now going through our last phase of research about how much of that 8.4 kilowatts can we start to distribute between the cars, going to the lights that affect Wi-Fi. I think you're starting to see what we talk about. These are all ingredients that are putting together as recipes, and we have to have BIM to do that. So that's that piece. Let me also pop over here to say, there's also some other technologies. We have friends over in Serbia, Strawberry Energy, that started this process that we're taking to a 2.0 level called solar panel stations for you to charge up your cell phones and also get Wi-Fi coverage. It's called street furniture. So much so that, I don't know if I have the picture of it, but they're actually installed over at Canary Wharf right now in a different type of configuration. And right now we have 400,000 users around the world with only 20 trees installed. The average time that they sit down is 13 minutes. And what we do is we ask them to download an app for free, put in their name, their age, and their gender. So we're not getting into privacy issues, just that. What we do then is that we sell that back to advertising companies so that they can say, okay, in order for you to actually access the power on the Wi-Fi, you have to sit through a 60-second commercial or download the app. Boom, and there you go. That's approximately generating $250,000 per tree per year. That can be shared with the municipality, a non-tax-based revenue stream. That's very smart cities. These are the types of things when you start to take into account, how do we start? Where do we start with a smart city? Could you imagine things like that all around Dublin? In the case of places that have high sun, we also have solar shades that do a very, very similar type of thing. I'm going to quickly go through the last part here because this is about the projects. And this first one I want to show you is in Saudi Arabia. It's our first attempt at smart cities. It's the world's tallest tower under construction right now. It's called the Kingdom Tower in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, put up by the Royal Saudi family. We got involved because we were really good at 3D and BIM, and there was no budget line item for smart cities. It just wasn't. So where do you find the line item? Because they wanted to work with us, and they found a place for us in marketing. So we were going to do all this stuff about okay, we're going to market this thing, and we worked with Smith Gill, the architects of the tower, except that we noticed that there's an entire city for 1 million people that wasn't designed yet. So what we got was like a bunch of master model boxes. What you see that's designed is actually what we had to do just to get our marketing contract in place. So we kind of backed into being master planners. And this is the first city to be DC powered only. There is no AC current at all because there's no need to actually transmit anything because every building is its own generation of power. Each one is actually secured, each building, for its own wastewater, so there's no centralized wastewater treatment plant. This is fully autonomous vehicle, except for Ferrari Boulevard that surrounds the Freedom Tower because Prince Ali has a Ferrari, and if you have a Ferrari, you're allowed to drive in. Imagine that, so I'm sure all of us can drive in there. Crazy, but that's what you can do when you have money. This is 1 kilometer tall. It's going to house about 35,000 people at any one time. And there will be people that don't leave this facility for hours, days, weeks, and months at a time. It is a vertical city. Everything inside of it has parks, recreation, schools, hospitals, places to shop, places to work and live. It's a remarkable project. We're 40 floors up out of the ground. It'll be really interesting to see if they complete it. But right now, everything is on track. The money's there, the will is there. But we are building the world's largest terrorist target. That's priority number 1. So we really have to think a lot differently, such as our BIM goes out 100 kilometers from the center point of this tower. And then for every kilometer in, we have a different sense of protocol for the actual security of this facility and the surrounding city. Because we did not want this to be an armed encampment, except that you're a little over 100 kilometers from where all the fighting's happening over in Yemen. That's reality. So really interesting when you start to get into this thing about, this just isn't about building. Yes, we use 4D. No, we did not use Navisworks because we know how to do better. And we actually did our quantity takeoff SWOT. Now this thing is actually on time, under budget, and the entire city is being built in China. Yeah, I said that right. So here's some construction photographs. In order to build this right, there wasn't enough talent, first of all, in that area of Saudi Arabia to actually build the tower. They had to import people. Those people that they imported are focused on the tower. How do you build a city of 1 million people that surrounds it when you have no workers? So what we did was, and then you're going to import the workers. At what cost, what expense, all that type of stuff. So what we did was we went in and we took our BIM, we took a fabrication model, and we worked very closely with the Beijing New Buildings Materials Group in Beijing. We took over 5 factories, and we're actually producing through CNC machines the largest digital fabrication project in the world. This means that we're pumping out different materials, different types of building types, all driven by BIM. If we didn't have BIM, we couldn't do this. It'd be impossible physically to do this because of the time constraints. So that's why our BIM has to be more than perfect than what's being pushed out there. This is why we have the best people in the world as process managers to actually manage those production teams. What we've been able to do so far is to get this one piece done, which is this is the expat community, because the majority of people that we're going to sell to are the expats, right? So this is the way that we're actually designing it. It does not look like a prefabricated building, does it? Because most prefabricated buildings look like the box cargo holds that it's maximized for, because you want to maximize the amount of way of logistically getting something somewhere. I've even seen some stuff that people are going, oh, that's the way of the future, where they took the old, the stuff you see out here on the docks, those P&O large containers, and they pimp them out, and then they stack them, and they go, isn't that beautiful? I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Really? Really? So, good. But those like people that vote for Trump, it's like, no, that's not the way it's done. This is a different way of working. It's actually saying, let's get in. So our partners in this is Arrow. And what we've challenged them with is, I want all MEP and structurals to be able to break apart so that you actually create that model at the end. I'm going to finish up here because I know I'm running a little late, but I wanted to push this out here. This is a project the size of San Francisco and Guangzhou, up out of the ground, very, very similar in style. We did talk about the Australian project, but this is one that I haven't shown before. This was recently designed. This is the world's tallest building based upon the Fibonacci sequence. It's 1 mile high in Baltimore, Maryland. So you're the first people to hear about it. This Fibonacci sequence is actually built for withstanding all the different pressures, especially when you go 1 mile up into the sky. And this is all based upon affordable housing. Imagine that. So we're actually now making this affordable for the average person in Baltimore to purchase and start to aspire to actually being someone that understands real estate, that real estate is no longer about dirt, it's about architecture. So using Fibonacci has been a wonderful experience working through all the different issues, because then we can actually take things and use gravity to actually push a lot of the ecological and the environmental stuff that people talk about and actually do it. Gray water being pushed down through the building, capturing the rainwater up in the building and doing something with it. Taking that gray water and actually start to demarcate exactly where that needs to be, right? All gray water isn't bad when you treat it. And that's where the ecosystem of the future is, both vertical and horizontally throughout the built environment. So here's some sketches about what we're thinking this thing should look like. We should be under construction within the next year. So I'm going to end right here with this guy. Why? Because he's badass. And what I'm looking for in this audience is, what about badass BIM? Want to join me? For real. This actually is going to take a community. It's not going to be about one guy. It's not going to be about one company. It's going to be about community. And right now, we are banking on Ireland to make that happen, to build this. Multi-BIM environments around the world, starting here in Dublin. Actually making sure that every asset above ground and below ground is perfectly put into a geospatial environment inside of a gaming engine. Why? Because that's the start. It's going to morph over time when more technologies come on through. But this is the best next step that we can take as an industry to start to make sure that the data that's embedded inside of this three-dimensional world, you can write apps that pull and filter out what those particular needs are. In this case, you're going to see something that Mayor Reed of Atlanta used to convince the general public and the city council that they should move the Georgia Dome football stadium to a new location and watch the economic impact happen. So all it's doing is just giving a nice little view, and then you're going to see things pop up. Right? This is the data that resides underneath it. Now, the data can be in many, many different types of databases. Now you're starting to see what the power of BIM is. BIM is a throughput. It's like a router to actually provide information to make a better informed decision, or in this case, make a persuasive argument. He said that if he had this as a young politician, he'd probably be president by now, because it's so persuasive that he can actually get his point across without having to look through an environmental impact study that's like this thick that people glaze over. You can actually show it. So with that, I really don't want to see this. I lived in China for about 7 years. My wife's from China. I have a son that was born in Shanghai. Great place. But I'd rather see this. Let's start doing something together that's special. This is why I get up every morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I'm afraid my mind is a bit blown away by all of that. I don't know where to even start. But perhaps somebody here has some questions they'd like to ask Paul. Sorry, yes,
Simon Keogh, architect. You're fascinating about the ability to be able to obviously generate new spaces, new assets, new vertical and horizontal assets. I mean, in Dublin and probably a lot in the West as well, we've got a huge amount of existing space. And I'm just wondering, just maybe talk a little bit about the reusing of that already phenomenal resource. We've got huge legislation coming in a couple of years' time regarding the sustainability of that and to be able to reuse, retrofit that. I mean, could you just maybe talk a little bit about how your ideas would fit into that, into those existing spaces?
That's the question of a lifetime. There's a lot more existing cities and existing buildings than we're doing new ones. The great thing about the new ones is that we learn what works and what doesn't. Not that we're ever going to have a failure, but we're saying what's optimal, which means everything I talked about recipes, we've got to create a cookbook. Gary Lawler is actually leading up our operations here in Ireland. And one of the ways that we start to take a look at this is that I had him actually speak at Parliament on smart cities. They actually requested a sit down in the House of Commons. So Gary sat there and read a statement, and they were going, yeah, okay. And then the questions started. So exactly what he said. What can government do from a policy aspect to start to enable a lot of these things to happen? In the case of products, we can create street furniture all day long, but is that really a smart city? Well, it's convenient. It provides a non-text-based revenue stream, but what it does is it has the politicians asking further questions instead of legislating that you need a level 2 BIM model when they don't even know what BIM is. Anytime that you have government getting involved with an industry's processes is a freaking train wreck, right? Kobe? Are you kidding me? Really, Kobe? That was developed like 20 years ago on an Excel spreadsheet. It hasn't changed. It's like we're taking 10 steps back because some legislator thought it was a really cool idea and he understands about this much. And all of a sudden now there's policy. So policy can go two ways. It can either be an absolute train wreck, or it can be something that really helps enable it. So in the case of Dublin, I look across over here at the 3 Arena, right? You know, an old storehouse, right? That's now been transformed into something else. That's good and makes economic sense. And, you know, great location, the whole bit. Start going further into it though. Now you start to get into the soul of the different neighborhoods. And what I really don't like in certain places like New York, my hometown, right? They go in there and they sort of blockbust the entire thing and just put up like these, you know, soulless, you know, towers thinking that's modernization. That just happened in Brooklyn, where, you know, Forest City Ratner, great group, but they went in there and they took an entire neighborhood, knocked it down, and they put up like some really bad sports arena with all these, you know, fancy towers on it that have nothing to do with the context of what that's supposed to be. What I'd rather see is the ingredients be reused into recipes for the existing cities. See what works on the green fields. You don't have to take the entire Megillah in and implement it holistically. It's about how do you make priorities based upon guiding principles that make sense for even, you know, Walkinstown or Hove or these different neighborhoods, and start to understand that this is never going to be Dublin's smart city, and because someone legislates it and they put banners up on the light poles. You know, anyone can do that. It's about really making realistic change, which means that the industry has to do it project by project, but understand that there's got to be a vision. Which is why I really, really enjoy that CETA exists, because my recommendation would be create CETA and you have something in there, because now you have the academic world, you have the private world, along with hopefully, you know, the political world coming together, and you have the throughput, so that people understand when they're doing day-to-day stuff that there's a vision to go, yeah, but that's what we're striving for. But then again, I could be wrong.
Any other questions here? And then there,
Angus O'Keefe from Ronan O'Donovan. Just wondering, there are a lot of disparate systems you talk about there which have various data standards, various process standards, just a wealth of data and information and life cycles that are different for different systems. What do you see facilitating the sustainable exchange of information between all those systems? Is it linked data? Is it semantic web? Or where do you see it in the long term?
Great question, and actually that's where cross-industry cooperation has to happen. You know, the stuff you were talking about, semantic web and these types of things are great. You know, on the gaming engine side of things, we use WebGL, you know, a good standard that allows you not to have plugins. It's just part of the standard, so any browser can actually work as an app, which is wonderful. It hasn't emerged yet, and that is actually the challenge that we have, which is it's the interoperability, not the interoperability association stuff. I mean, we tried that for 10 years, kind of worked. It's about taking that approach by saying, should we be relooking at our databases? That the stacks that we create are done in such a static way that when you try to map and make a standard talk to each other, if one standard changes, you gotta go through the entire process all over again. It's a freaking nightmare. So we're talking about even beyond enterprise class cooperation. It's about multi-enterprise workflow, which is going to really come down to studies of perhaps Dublin Institute of Technology, saying that we need to have a practice around this, because we have to understand that the databases that we are creating now are wrong. They're based upon, even the object ones from Oracle and stuff like that, they're nice systems, but they're not going to really make, we as an industry have to tell the software manufacturers what we want. I'm sick and tired of having to change our processes because they want to sell so many pieces of software. Those days have got to stop, right? We got to tell them now, we need this. So I do know of a technology that we're experimenting with right now. The first one we tried was based upon XML schemas, and it was a big glob. And it kind of sort of worked, but XML is not, it's not the data exchange that we want. Right now, we're using JSON, which is it's based on JavaScript, which is a lot easier way of starting to manipulate, especially inside of a gaming environment. What's going to come up from the next 5 years? I think we have to have a conversation with the industry guys. They're all here, and they're dying for user feedback. We just don't talk to them because we think that they're trying to sell us something. What they're looking for is exactly what you just said. So it doesn't exist right now. What we're doing is trying to build coalitions and doing it piecemeal, but with the understanding that there's got to be that big vision of we can no longer do databases the way we want because the stacks are killing us. We have to have on-demand restacking so that the data makes sense, not just to us, but between machines. Because if we don't get control of that, the machines will take over. That's what Elon Musk said. So yeah, that's the question of a lifetime.